Hey, 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 hey. Cool. Welcome to this week's stream where we look at perfecting all things immersive rendering from Unreal Engine using the Off-World Live tools. This week we're going to be looking at more VR rendering techniques. Last week we got pretty far into getting the best render settings for cinematic VR rendering for MetaQuest 3 specifically. And now on the sort of tail end of that, we found out some stuff about ffmpeg and how it's a really cool codec for kind of automating some of these output formats. This week, yeah, we're going to dive a bit deeper into ffmpeg. I've sort of been looking at how we can use it actually integrated into Unreal for some pretty cool uses. Namely, this time we're going to be looking at getting the EXRs that you might have output out of Unreal and automatically sequencing them, rendering them out into another MP4 file, adding all the best kind of codecs and frame rate information and metadata to ensure that this stuff runs well in 360. So yeah, this ffmpeg tool, really cool. And yeah, as I say, we kind of like glossed over it last week, but I think it'd be quite cool to dive a bit deeper into it, how it works this week. So yeah, this is the tool here. You can download this for Windows as a kind of executable file, really lightweight, little executable, and it kind of installs some libraries for you to do some cool stuff. So yeah, we can get a Windows build here using this kind of blog. You can get this kind of 7-zip essentials. This will give you the most recent version of ffmpeg that's been uploaded to their GitHub repository. And then you can go from there and you'd usually install it to your C drive to make it kind of run fastest. Once you've got that installed, you probably find that say in your users, you create a folder called ffmpeg. So let's see where I saved it. Yeah, here, and then it's sort of look like this. If you were to open one of these, you get this folder, and you've got this kind of like bin, which has got the ffmpeg executable. You've got these kind of filters and resamplers and rescalers and utilities. So it's kind of doing all the things that say something like Premiere or DaVinci might do, but really lightweight on this kind of just simple command line tool, which is quite cool. I haven't really explored these presets yet, but you can see they've still got 360p, 1080p, 60 frames per second. I assume this is it's got some kind of presets here. Not sure exactly how you use those, but yeah, you've also got like a README, and it shows a massive list of all the things that ffmpeg can do. You've got these decoders, encoders. The one I've been using here is AV1. I think you've got things that you might recognize like MPEG-4, AV1, MPEG. So you get the ability to use all of these just by downloading that quick little zip there. Also got like effects, which is quite funny. I just quite like to you see some people get pretty wacky with the effects on here, just through a command line tool, which is kind of fun. So yeah, stuff like that. But I'll show you a quick example of, say you have some EXRs that you've rendered out. Past directory for that. Just got this ffmpeg folder. I've been doing some 4K tests. I've got a series of EXRs here. So I've got like 400 EXRs here, but what you can do is go in here and just press CMD. bring up the command prompt in the actual directory that you're already in. Then from here, you can paste a ffmpeg command. I've got a load saved here that I've just kind of built up. From various docs and talking to Gemini. Gemini is really useful for, saying, here's what I want to do. Can you make me a command to do this? Takes a little bit of wrangling to kind of input some of these, find out where Gemini's gone wrong, and just read any error messages that come up and just, either remove things that Gemini's added in or tweak those. But here's a command that's worked for me for a sequencing of EXRs into a equirectangular ready for just mono cinematic VR. Frame rate 60 frames per second. Taking all the frames in my folder under this name level sequence with a number. I've just specified that I only want to do 200 frames just as a test. We've got this codec AV1, which is kind of the best codec to use for VR because you can kind of go to really high resolutions, decodes, lower bit rates, makes lower bit rates look better. So you can kind of run this stuff at higher frame rates, at higher resolutions, but a lower bit rate. The lower bit rate allowing you to go faster frame rate wise on the limited hardware of request. These are kind of quality presets. And then we've got this metadata injection to just tell anything that's running on that it's equirectangular mono. And then it's just going to output to this location. So yeah, that's what that line of code is doing. I can just paste this in here and it will show that it's kind of running through. You should start to see a MP4 being created in the doc in the location kind of told it to go to. You can see down the bottom here, it's running through the frames. I don't think this is necessarily that much quicker than doing it in Premiere, but I guess workflow wise, it's kind of quicker to just paste this bit of code once you've worked it out for any sequences you might have rented out. So yeah, let's finish writing that out now of this sequence. And yeah, that runs as an MP4. That's awesome as a kind of quick test. Another cool thing that you can do with it is you can get it to output a downscaled version of the same video just in the same command, which is really sweet. So let me just grab my list of commands again. Batch rescale here, bit of a longer command, but we can go using the same folder here, going from the EXR folder, and takes this one in, and it's going to do 2 videos as an output now. You can see here we've got output 4K and output 2K. This is specified here. Again, we've got 200 frames. It's making this filter complex, and the filter complex is this kind of batch rescaling. We've got one at scale 4K and one at scale 2K. This split means that it's like take this one set of EXRs and split it into 2 outputs. So yeah, there we go, that one's finished. So we've got 2 outputs here. And we've got 4K, 2K. Yeah, really good for like dailies, quick tests. You can see in the metadata here, we've got this one's 1920 by 1080, this one's 4K. Super cool, super quick. Just ran those. It's kind of like making a preset in Premiere or something, but workflow wise, that's really sweet. So yeah, loads more digging you can do into this kind of method of taking these EXRs and sequencing them. Since Unreal doesn't really do this by default, it's quite a cool method using ffmpeg. So next thing to kind of reduce this workflow down a little more is to make ffmpeg run in Unreal itself. And yeah, we've just been kind of looking at ways to do this. You can do this in the project settings and the movie render queue settings of Unreal. So in project settings here, we've got movie pipeline CLI encoder. And there's a cool video explaining some of the simple setup for this, but it is like super old by this point. I don't think people have used this for a little while, or it's just been kind of assumed that it's kind of a pro workflow method and people using it kind of know what they're doing. It's kind of less geared towards indie creators, but I think after some working out, it can also be really useful for people like me who are literally just only just getting into this stuff. So yeah, this is sort of how it might look by default. It's got executable path ffmpeg.exe. I think this will automatically, doesn't need an actual kind of hard-coded path as long as you've saved it onto your C drive in a folder called ffmpeg. This I've just kept default. Yes, it's kind of a debug, or if you don't have the available codec. Yeah, main thing to look at here is the command line format. This is kind of doing all the things that we had in the notepad section here. So this format and how we've set, things like frame rate, video codec, quality preset. This is kind of taking these things and it's just saying like, let's just set all of these to be parameters. That's why they're in these kind of curly brackets. Codec is in curly brackets. Video inputs. So what that's saying is that it's in curly brackets here because it's just being set by this parameter here. So it's kind of like AV1 is put into here, audio codec is put into here. So it's kind of just setting it up easier so that then if you want to change this, you just change it in this field instead. So it's kind of just error managing. So this is a good path that I've found for doing some cool stuff with these kind of outputs. I'll just sort of paste it here. We can see it in one place. The only thing I've changed from like the default that's kind of given to you in a traditional project is taking this additional local args, which is like arguments you can set in movie render queue afterwards. That initially is like just after video input here, but putting it down here means that it will do any for things like what I want to do, which is like rescaling and things like that. You want to put it after the video is kind of encoded. So I'll just move this back down here. Quality, that is just reading from here, and these are again set in movie render queue. So it's a little bit funny. It's kind of like it's giving you kind of some parameters you don't need to kind of hard code in, but it's saying like, these are likely things that you're going to want to change in movie render queue, and it's just giving you those. So basically taking this initial string, I was kind of able to get an output using command line immediately after rendering an EXR sequence in movie render queue. Then adding this command line encoder setting. Let's ignore this additional arguments here, but this is what's set here in these curly brackets. And then the quality, that's these. So you can see how the parameters are just like talking to each other here. But yeah, using this command line encoder, this is kind of how you say, take this normal render of 4K EXR sequence, output to this folder, do a new one to a new folder. Stream test. And let's run that to show how it will output this as a MP4 immediately. Just doing 10 frames as a quick test. For the XRs, got the MP4, and we have this quick little text file that flashes up. That is taking these visible EXRs and then sort of writing them to an MP4. Don't know what format that is. I don't know if that is literally the ffmpeg command flashing up. Might be quite cool to try and click into that text file while that's up quickly. I don't know if that's break anything, but oh yeah, so because this is just 10 frames, it's gonna render, but you get the idea that it's outputting this MP4 here. So yeah, that's the kind of method, and really cool how you can then have your EXRs to change different things. Then you've also got maybe a dailies preview render, or whatever you want to do with that. This might also do, because I've been messing around with these. What's also cool is you can output, or you can immediately do a downscale as well. So we could render at 8K, and then use command line encoder to downscale that final output as it gets to larger renders. This could be way better than messing around in a GUI with something like Premiere. It'd save a lot of time. So for people doing like massive batch renders of cinematic DR stuff, I think this is really worth looking into. We're going to look at supplying some like I don't know how we're going to integrate it. Perhaps just supply some command lines in our knowledge base, but also we might actually just do some deeper integration of something like an output window here. Then we'll tap into ffmpeg to just immediately output that sequence. Of course, like you can output as H.264 at the moment, but H.265 or AV1 are way preferred output methods. So to do this immediate output of an MP4 now, before Unreal kind of catches up and integrates that, this is definitely the way to go if you want to do it via that kind of smoothest workflow. What I found is it's a bit fiddly to get it actually up and running. You have to do a bit of figuring out the best command line format and things like that, best command to add into this additional command line arguments. But once you've got that figured out, you can take this kind of render preset and just change the final output file or change the sequence that's using it. So once it's figured out, it can become really useful. So yeah, let's see from this list if I can show the downscaling. So it goes up here. Yeah, we had it last week for the 180 VR. Yeah, so it's got this scale 8K. Yeah, so I think this is reading from something that was like just over 8K, like 9,000 pixels-ish, downscaling using this like Lanzo's method, which came out really smooth. What we'd have to do is put this VF section into this additional command line arguments. What I might do is just see if this works here. Kind of experimenting here at this point, but what it should probably do is take the 4K and scale it up to 8K. Let's just see if it outputs that kind of file. Screen test. Let's just check what I've got in there. Release. Yeah, let's see what that does. See, I've been doing a lot of experimenting with this. What I would really love to see is multiple outputs out of a single render. So you could render one set of EXRs and then get the next render job to read those EXRs without having to go through every frame and re-render them. Just output a different resolution or a different any number of different settings. It seems like there's definitely a way to do this, but at the moment I haven't quite worked that out. But you could always just take the existing EXRs and do the one-line render from there. So we should see this being 8K. So we can see that that upscale has actually worked. So that's really cool. This is obviously not going to look good because it's a 4K upscale to 8K, so it's not going to look any better. I think the fact that we've only done a few frames here, that's why it's just whizzing past really quickly. But it's interesting to see that utility there, that just by adding this line, we were able to scale that 4K up to an 8K. This could obviously work in the reverse if we render a 10K video and then scale it down to 8K. That's all being done, just from Unreal without having to open any of the external program. So yeah, I think it's a really cool workflow. Not the most visually exciting stream this time, but everybody can see the potential there, especially for people rendering masses of VR content and looking to streamline that process. I think this ffmpeg tool has so much potential, and as I say, down the line we're going to look at integrating this a little more, but for now hopefully this is a good reference on how to get started playing around with that. Do comment if you need any of these exact commands. Also, feel free to jump in the Discord to ask about that. I'm very happy to share these commands because they should take a little bit of tweaking to get them working, in actual engine. Hard to find documentation on the exact usage of Unreal Engine ffmpeg commands, but as I say, Gemini is your friend for this kind of stuff because it will just scour the whole internet and try to piece together something that kind of works. It's been wrong here and there, of course, but if you keep sort of tweaking and reading the error messages for this stuff, you can get it to help generate some pretty cool things. So yeah, I think that sums up this kind of overview or deeper dive into ffmpeg and how it can integrate into Unreal. Next week, we're going to be looking at back into something a bit more visual, doing a bit more pixel peeping, looking at this kind of VR 180 image I've been rendering and just trying to remove any kind of anti-aliasing or chattering in these really distant areas. Got a couple of techniques in mind for it. I'm just going to do as much digging over the next week as I can to try and find some solid information on how to get some really, really clean renders for these kind of distant areas. So yeah, thanks for tuning in this week, and yeah, catch you next time. Cheers.